a solitary female navigating the highest echelons of authority in Tudor England, openly challenging the accepted beliefs of the established religion. Was this act courage or a betrayal of the crown? Anne Ascu, identified by this name in official court documentation, did not hold a noble rank. However, she grew into one of the most notorious individuals executed under the reign of King Henry VIII. She was born in 1521 to Sir William Askew, an estate owner from Lincolnshire who supported the monarch and received an education which was uncommon for women of that time. Yet her learning was not merely a passive quality. It functioned as a powerful instrument. During a period when the differentiation between religious transformation and unacceptable deviation was exceptionally fine, an openly accepted Protestantism. Specifically, this included rejecting the doctrine of transubstantiation, the Roman Catholic belief that the communion bread and wine are literally transformed into the actual body and blood of Christ. Questioning this established dogma constituted a capital crime under the 1539 Act of 6 Articles. Her pronouncements were absolute. I would rather read 5 lines in the Bible than hear 5 masses in the church, she asserted during her official questioning. These were not merely reckless statements. They represented purposeful opposition to the fundamental principles of Tudor religious governance. By 1545, her preaching activity in London, which was public, articulate, and dangerously persuasive, had drawn the scrutiny of Bishop Stephen Gardner and Chancellor Thomas Rithersley. These specific figures, recognized as strong proponents of Catholic dogma within Henry's highly fragile ecclesiastical arrangement, perceived Anne not as a mistaken subject, but rather as a destabilizing menace. She was engaged in more than just propagating heretical views. She was actively undermining the monarch's assertion as the supreme authority over the Church of England. Furthermore, Anne's skepticism regarding established doctrine coincided with growing political tensions within the royal court, particularly suspicion surrounding Queen Katherine Parr, who herself was known to hold evangelical sympathies, and was initially arrested, questioned, and subsequently set free one time, but they returned to apprehend her again. On this second occasion, she would not achieve her freedom. According to the description provided by John Bale, a Protestant writer of her era, and possessed a virtue that was pure and flawless not only physically, but also represented a profound purity in her adherence to the Christian faith. That strength of conviction would rapidly lead her into direct confrontation with the most dreaded, torturous device available in England, the rack, Anne Ascu's brutal interrogation, below the stone holding cells of the Tower of London. Anne Ascu was forcibly taken into a situation from which very few people ever returned whole. What transpired afterward was an incidence of state-sponsored brutality so extreme that it caused shock even in Tudor England, a nation already desensitized by public executions involving burning, hanging, and the use of the sword, and had already undergone trial and received condemnation for the crime of heresy. That outcome should normally have marked the conclusion of the matter. However, her refusal to disclose names, especially concerning the women in the court who were suspected of sharing her Protestant beliefs, left her interrogators dissatisfied. Chancellor Thomas Rithersley and Sir Richard Rich, acting under the formal authorization of the Privy Council, adopted an action that was unprecedented. They personally supervised the torment of a woman who had already been sentenced, an activity that was not only legally questionable but also highly exceptional, even when considering the norms of Henry VIII's administration. The apparatus, referred to as the rack in official legal documents, was constructed to painfully stretch the body until it reached the point of serious damage to the joints. It was seldom employed against females and never implemented with such direct political motivation, and, restrained by bonds at her wrists and ankles, was extended until her shoulder and hip joints were violently separated. Based on her own documentation, recorded by the chronicler John Bale, she stated, "They did put me on the rack, because I confessed no ladies or gentlewomen to be of my opinion." She detailed how Rithersley and Rich operated the stretching mechanism themselves until the entire strength in my arms and legs was completely eliminated. Yet, even while enduring this intense suffering, she provided them with no information. Torture, although technically considered illegal under the principles of English common law without direct authorization from the monarch, had evolved into a secretive tool utilized by Tudor authority. It was frequently justified by either a royal directive or, more commonly, simply by the requirements of political necessity. Anne Askew's specific situation obscured the already vague distinction separating the judicial process from blatant persecution. She was not being tortured to extract details about her own actions. She was being tortured solely for the purpose of implicating other individuals, potentially including Queen Katherine Parr. Nevertheless, Anne's determination did not weaken. "I had rather to die," she subsequently documented, "than to break my faith." Her resolute resistance transformed her beyond a simple heretic. She became a powerful emblem. She remained unshaken even after her physical body had been damaged beyond repair. After the torturers completed their work, she was so severely injured that she was no longer able to walk. She was transported, broken, restrained, and barely conscious back to her solitary confinement. And despite all this, the court still demanded her immediate execution. Her interrogators held hope that the rack would coerce her into submission. Instead of breaking her, it cemented her place in history. The sheer brutality inflicted upon her physical form only served to deepen the profound influence of her deeply held conviction. The attempt at torture had failed, and the only remaining element was the ultimate public display, the official execution intended to make one final attempt to silence her vocal opposition. Public spectacle burning. She was physically unable to ambulate. Being unable to walk, with her body weakened extensively by the previous torture, Anne Ascu was transported to the location of the stake while seated in a chair. Her physical structure was ruined by the rack, yet her resolve remained intact. The date was July 16, 1546, and the location was Smithfield, London, historically recognized as a site for capital punishment, especially targeting those accused of heresy. Here, observed by nobility, religious leaders, and the general populace simultaneously, England performed its most terrible ceremonies. However, this occasion differed from the usual executions. Anne Ascu was not the sole victim. 3 other men who had been condemned, John Leals, John Hadlam, and John Hemley, were scheduled to share her fate that day. Despite the others, it was Anne who captivated the audience's attention. She is noted as the first English woman known to have been both tormented within the Tower and subsequently burned alive at the stake. The extreme savagery of her treatment had already spread through quiet whispers throughout the capital city. Now, the inevitable culmination, public, intentional, and irreversible, was about to commence. She was secured to the vertical stake using heavy chains. Her fractured anatomy too delicate to support itself upright. Historical records suggest that a small seating platform or support structure was constructed specifically to keep her in an upright position. Beneath her, the execution staff carefully piled bundles of dry timber, known specifically as faggots, which were carefully dried to ensure the maximum possible flame. Accounts from eyewitnesses describe her attitude as calm, perhaps even completely composed. She reportedly declined the final opportunity to retract her beliefs. Bishop Nicholas Shaxton, who had previously been a Protestant before reverting to Catholic doctrine, was assigned the duty of delivering a sermon at the site of the burning, but Anne chose to disregard him completely. Bale documents that she maintained silence during his entire sermon, her lips motionless. Her decision not to engage became, in itself, her ultimate demonstration of resistance. A small quantity of gunpowder was secured around her neck, which was a standard practice intended to expedite death and minimize suffering by detonating while surrounded by the fire. As the fire was ignited, the assembled onlookers watched. It must be remembered that in Tudor England, executions by fire were never concealed acts. They were conspicuous, dramatic displays intentionally designed to incite fear. Her weakened physique became the central focus of a grim, public execution meant to purify England of theological deviation. But contrary to silencing her, the intense flames sparked a lasting legacy. Anne Ascu met her death without offering any confession, without betraying anyone, and without displaying fear. Her published writings, preserved within the accounts of Anne Ascu's examinations, circulated widely among groups of Protestant reformers. John Fox later incorporated her entire narrative into his volume Acts and Monuments *, stating that she was incinerated for the demonstration of Jesus. The core message became unequivocally clear. The governing state possessed the capacity to annihilate the body, but it could not assert dominance over the spirit. Her profound suffering served as a powerful condemnation of England's brutal policies concerning religion. This was a policy so excessively violent that it transformed a young woman into a symbol of martyrdom. Before the entire population, Smithfield and Flames. Yet, from the resulting ashes emerged one of the most haunting testaments connected to the English Reformation. The relentless torture and subsequent execution of Anne Ascu functions as a solemn testament to the serious dangers confronted by those individuals who dared to question established power structures in Tudor England. Her period of agony was not just a personal tragedy experienced by one individual, but rather a severe exposure of the era's relentless conflict centered on individual conscience and specific beliefs. It was an agonizing experience that revealed both the extreme cruelty of those in authority and the innate persistence of deep conviction. How do these instances of officially sanctioned state violence continue to influence our present-day concepts of both justice and religious adherence? Please provide your reflections below. As Anne herself famously wrote, "I would rather to die than to break my faith."